Jonathan Edwards.
Mr Deputy Speaker, Gai Ddimino, blwyddyn newydd dda I chi. May I wish you a Happy New Year. I would like to confine my remarks to three key points. Firstly, I would like to add my voice to those calling for our continued membership of the largest trading bloc in the world. Secondly, I would outline the concerns for Welsh ports, which will face immediate challenges to their existing position as a result of changes to our customs arrangements. And the weakness of this bill's ability to protect our vital industries will form the final part of my speech, and we've had many interesting contributions on this point already this evening. Mr Speaker, as promised, I want to first reiterate to the British Government the illegality and harm they will cause by ripping us out of the customs union. A student of GCSE economics would be able to explain the foundations of international trade as laid out by David Ricardo. His theory of comparative advantage is not a complex one to grasp. By specialising in particular industries combined with free international trade, all nations will see positive results. The premise is simple. Rather than creating a range of mediocre products, the highly specialised industries of each nation produce better goods. These are then traded internationally, satisfying domestic demand for the products produced in other nations. Whether you agree that this commercial international order should be our goal or not, it has underpinned our economic approach to trade for centuries. International marketplaces have moved on from Ricardo's time. Instead of cloth and wine, the modern economy trades aeroplane wings, specialised steel products and microchips. To account for this complexity, policymakers have created institutions to manage commerce. The European Customs Union is the greatest example of one such institution. Through removing physical and financial barriers to trade, it has created the largest, richest, most powerful network of free trading states in the world. As a result of our membership of the Customs Union, Welsh businesses can trade on a completely unfettered basis with the bloc, gaining access to nearly 600 million consumers. As a trading bloc, the EU Customs Union also applies a common external tariff entering the bloc, and we should remind ourselves of the extra costs that will hit our exporters if we are no longer members and have no agreement on future tariffs. Carmarthenshire, Mr Speaker, is known for its agricultural produce. So it's worth putting on the record that the tariff for animal products can be over 138% with an average of 20%. The maximum tariff on dairy products can be as much as 134% with an average of 45%. I can also point out to other major employers in Carmarthenshire who produce manufacturing component parts for exports who will obviously be following the upcoming negotiations with great interest. I don't think we should be under any illusions. If it becomes burdensome for these companies to move their goods, be it financially or regulatorily, they will relocate. Our membership of the single market and the Customs Union has been invaluable in securing valuable foreign direct investment into the areas such as my home communities in the Yarmouth Valley. And before I'm accused of scaremongering, today's shambolic reshuffle, Mr Speaker, was being trailed in the press over the weekend as a reorganisation to prepare for a no-deal scenario. The 27 members of the EU are not the only ones with whom we will lose our existing free trade arrangements. 67 countries have arrangements with the EU Customs Union members, which must be grandfathered, although there continues to be some dispute whether this indeed is possible. This issue will be discussed in greater detail tomorrow as we deliberate the trade bill. By pulling my nation out of the European Customs Union in search of some false free trade, low tariff Brexit nirvana, the British government risked the jobs and wages of my constituents. The Minister will undoubtedly claim that this is the will of the people. We can of course engage in a tit-for-tat argument over whether this is the case or not. However, I think this denies him the opportunity to outline the purported benefits of the British government's approach. For this reason, I ask him the following. If certainty is his aim, and the status quo is certainty, why is rolling the dice on over half our imports and exports a good idea? Why is he and the British government gambling with my constituents' jobs and wages? Why is he pulling us out of the Customs Union at all? Before I conclude this section of my speech, I would also like to implore the Labour front bench to come to their senses. The constructive ambiguity of the Labour Party's Brexit position may offer marginal electoral advantage, but it's providing the silver platter on which the Tories are able to serve up an extreme and damaging Brexit.
Hear, hear.
Rather than playing hokey-cokey when it comes to the single market and the Customs Union, I ask honourable members on the opposition benches to join us and make a clear stand that we are better off in these great European economic institutions. Let there be no mistake. that the Tories are only able to deliver their current policy of an extreme Brexit because the position of the Labour leadership is to leave the single market and the customs union after the transition phase.
Exactly. You're here.
Specifically on that point, does my honourable colleague agree with me that what they're not doing is supporting a jobs-first Brexit? If they supported a jobs-first Brexit, they would keep us in the single market and in the customs union.
Exactly.
Well, I'm very grateful for that intervention, and I'm aware that during this debate today, many honourable colleagues on the Labour backbenches have been making that exact point and imploring their front bench to change position. And there are some very interesting reports coming out of the PLP meeting this evening, Mr. Speaker. Before recess, the tangible and immediate chaos created by pulling us out of the customs union was vividly illustrated. The Prime Minister's attempt to conclude phase 1 of the negotiations were almost scuppered by the issue of the customs border on the island of Ireland. Others will be able to expound with greater invested passion as to why no such border should exist. I would, however, like to reference my concerns for the sea border my nation shares with Ireland and thus the European Union. Wales and its ports are intimately linked with Ireland. Holyhead, Fishguard and Pembroke Dock are vital trading links between Wales and the Republic of Ireland. Holyhead is the UK's second largest port. In excess of 400,000 trucks pass through it every year. A hard maritime border between Wales and the Republic of Ireland will inevitably hit Holyhead hard. And I asked Minister to read the excellent article on the 4th of January by my former university lecturer, Professor Richard Wynne-Jones, on this specific issue, facing Holyhead and his native island of Ynys Môn or Anglesey. In Holyhead, there is simply no space in or around the port for the kind of infrastructure that will be required to process the number of lorries and trailers that currently pass through it. A hard border in Holyhead can only yield chaos. The same problems also apply for Pembroke Dock and Fishguard. The inevitable consequences of physical constraints in and around the ports is that freight will need to find ways to bypass Holyhead and Wales, especially if there's a soft border between the British state and the European Union in Northern Ireland. Without trade arrangements which mirror the outcomes of what we already have, Welsh ports will be in danger of becoming uncompetitive. With the intention of pulling us out of the customs union, this bill and the actions of the ministers make it clear that to the people of Holyhead, this government considers their livelihoods as dispensable. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight the concerns of an industry central to and symbolic of the Welsh economy, the steel sector. Primarily, their concerns centre on trade defence provisions. These are found in clauses 13, 14 and Schedule 4 and 5 of the bill. I'm sure the Minister will have seen last week's letter in the Financial Times from almost a dozen industry and union representatives, highlighting the fact that these clauses, and I quote, set up a lighter touch approach to illegal dumping by China and others than in the remaining EU and any other major economy. In the lead-up to the referendum, the exact opposite was promised by the Leave side. In an ITV Cymru debate which I took part in, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Nathan Gill from UKIP, speaking on behalf of the Leave side, promised that the British government, freed from the shackles of Brussels, would be able to impose prohibitive anti-dumping duties on China. And I'm sure this clear promise made during the time of the referendum was very influential on the vote in some of the communities of South Wales. When he was uttering these words, we know that the British government was selling the Welsh steel sector down the river. In March 2016, the British government blocked attempts to strengthen EU trade defences against imports on cheap Chinese steel that devastated Port Talbot Steelworks and took it to the brink of collapse, as we heard from the Honourable Member from Aberavon earlier in the debate. Yet again, it seems that this government has little concern for steelworkers, preferring to seek dodgy deals with Trump's America and causing up to Beijing over protecting Welsh jobs and wages. Mr. Speaker, fundamentally, this bill will be wholly unnecessary and its deficiencies of no concern if the policy of the British government followed the sensible path of remaining members of the European Union's customs union. For this reason and the reasons outlined above, my Plaid Cymru colleagues and I will be refusing to give this bill a second reading and will be voting against it this evening.